looked down where he lay. The little Lord Jesus asleep on the hay. The cattle are lowing low, for they peace. Let me to lay Jesus lay crying, lay me. I love thee, Lord Jesus. Look down from the sky and stay by my cradle to wash the fire. And stay by my cradle to wash the
Our next song is called Patapan.
When they take your little drum with your whistle, Robin, come. When we hear the fife and drum, pat-a-pat-a-pan. When we hear the fife and drum, Christmas should be frolic song. Pat-a-pat-a-pat-a-pan. Bless the men of olden days, let the King of Kings to praise. When they hear the fife and drum, when they hear the fife and drum, children won't be dumb. Rod and
Very much on behalf of the Mountains. I just want to thank you all for your support of all of their singing this season. We've gotten to sing around the community. Tomorrow they're going to be going to do caroling at the retirement homes in the area. They just finished, they're a little bit tired because they just finished 2 Madrigal dinners this weekend and 1 the weekend before that. But we just feel very supported here in the school district 428 and the community. It means a lot to what they do. And to me, of course. And not only have they been very busy doing that, but they've also been an exceptional group in terms of their individual achievements. We have a record number of students since I've been teaching here in this group that have been accepted to the Illinois All-State Choirs. We have 13 of them, I believe. I have to read their names because I can't remember these. Emma Carpenter, Daniel Dekalb, Taylor Dirks, Grace Gerke, who's not with this group, Maria Holloway-Racine, Mark Jesmer, Olivia Klonowski, Gabby Melms, Isaiah Pankey, Ben Rodriguez, Richie Spahn, and Grace Verbeck were all selected to the all-state choirs. And then also we had, again, a first for this, for us. We had 18 students accepted to the All-Midwest Choir through the American Choral Directors Association, which surprised us because this year they combined, usually our best was we had 13 students selected to from the 4 states of Ohio and Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois. This year they upped it to 10 states, and so we thought, wow, this is going to be really tough. And then they got 18 of them in to that honors choir from the 10 states. So there's about 250 students, and we have 18 from Dekalb, so we're very proud of that. And their names are Ali Bielik, Belle Eyerick, Jane Leopardo, Keegan Moore, Jackie Blanchard, Emma Carpenter, Kaylin Clark, Craig Croslow, Daniel Dekalb, Nate Harrison, Tegan Henriksen, Maria Holloway Racine, Mark Jesmer, Olivia Klonowski, Isaiah Pinky, Ben Rodriguez, Richie Spahn, and Grace Furman. So they've been doing a great job in their own as singers. So once again, thank you so very much for having us here, and we hope you have a wonderful holiday. We're just proud to be here to kick it off for you. So thanks for having us, bro. Tomorrow is a sing-along, so if you haven't got to spread some cheer with your voice, please come and join us tomorrow. We're meeting at the high school at 1:30 and invite anyone to join us. Thank you.
We expect you to make a costume overnight, though.
Yeah. We'll tell you where to get the time. All right. We have one more song for us as we depart.
Thank you again for having us. Our last song will be "Lure, Lure, Lure."
Lure, cocks are crowing, though there is no dawning light, for the stars are brightly glowing in the Holy Land tonight. Who walk with me?
Not I.
Who walk with me?
Not I.
Oh, come now. Should I never turn again, sing the 7 songs in remembrance.
Day,
Like a lonely wayward child, alone I go. To where the river winds are blowing, making fingers blue with cold. Trudging wearily I'm going, suffering miseries untold. I must find rest
for you.
I must find rest for you. Oh, come now, good Father, let me in for just one night in the barn. I would be sleepy, and if you don't, where can I go? If you're unkind, no rest I'll find, no rest I'll find, no rest I'll find. To the Lord I have it, for I found the manger here. Inside the stable lies the one distraught so dear. Be strong and glad, be strong and glad, oh Mary, all over the face I need.
Thank you so much. They were terrific.
Okay, next we have acceptance of gifts and donations, and this is an action item. That the Board of Education accept with gratitude the donation of $1,509.51 in materials plus labor from Lowe's Hero Project for the installation of doors in the classroom display windows at Lincoln Elementary School. Do we have a motion?
Move.
Roll call, please.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Albrin,
Yes.
Terry Malak,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Thanks to Lowe's.
Thank you very much. We don't have anyone here from Lowe's, but thank you to Lowe's for the generous donation. Next, we have public comment. Members of the public who wish to speak to the board should complete a request card prior to the meeting. This section of the meeting will be reserved for comments from the public. All comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and criticism of individuals is not in order. Do you have a card? First, we have Wendy Rhodes, and she's going to speak about the lice policy.
Remember last year, I was here advocating for a lice policy for our district, and I want to thank you. It's great. I'm not here to complain about it. I'm here to discuss a lack of communication amongst the schools to the teachers and to the parents. Our teachers are not being informed when there's lice in their classrooms. They cannot request extra cleaning. Our parents aren't receiving emails when there's lice within a certain grade level. Not every family has the email capability, and we're at 59% low income. Not everybody has access to the internet every single day like you and I may. Do paper notifications need to go home? Can we do robocalls where we call a certain grade, let them know there's lice in that grade? Parents should check the children. The policy isn't being followed. I have been quiet for about a year, though I've been very much out there helping families. I've done house checks. I've checked teachers. I've been out there trying to help when I can on my own time, working 2 jobs. So it's stressful. I last week firsthand experienced my kindergartner brought home lice. So knowing the policy, I notified the school, brought her in. She was checked with chopsticks, told that she didn't have it. They checked my other daughter and they said that she had eggs falling out. Well, if you know anything about lice, eggs don't fall out of the hair. They are glued into the hair shaft. And my daughter had dandruff falling out. And so I pointed that out to the nurse. Today, I brought my children in for a recheck. They have to be rechecked 7 to 10 days after they've come in contact with the lice. And I was told that my one daughter would not be checked. And my other daughter was only checked with a cell phone flashlight. Nobody went through her hair. They shined a light over and said that's effective enough. There's no consistency with how the policy is being followed. I do want to point out one school that's going above and beyond from what I've heard from parents. Brooks Elementary seems to be right on it. Parents are commending the nursing staff there, so I really want to say I appreciate what they're doing, how they're following the protocols. What can we do? We need to retrain on the policy. I do random calls to the schools. I do that to change my name and my voice because they know when I call. There's 2 schools that don't know the policy. And if you don't know the policy, how are you going to carry it out? And how do you teach other parents what to do? So we just have a lack in communication. So just bring that to your attention that something needs to change to, this policy is a great blueprint, but it's not going to be effective if you are not reading it and you're not following what is there. I'm just asking for some help on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, we have David Farrow, and he would like to speak on the residency survey.
Yes, I just want to say with regard, I had a different set of ideas to present tonight, but I got another idea as I watched these faces tonight. As you consider this initiative for residency survey, I think one of the things you ought to think about is what if a lot of numbers are being thrown around out there, how many and so forth and so on, but really the only number I thought about tonight was 1. What if one of those faces we saw tonight, somebody had to say to them, I'm sorry, you're not welcome in our school district. You don't qualify. So as we enter this season of generosity and giving, I ask the school board to consider that number 1. What if it was one of those faces that had to be told? That's all.
Thank you. Next, we have board committee reports and correspondence.
Very briefly, and in the spirit of giving, I'd like to report, I guess, that I had an opportunity to spend a little bit of time in the music program at Cortland School, and was able to offer, and I have accepted the auto harp so that they can learn that instrument, and it was value unknown.
Thank you for that.
Very nice.
Yeah. Thank you.
You gonna teach them? Yes.
Great.
Yes.
So 2 things, the teaching and the instrument. That's great.
We did have a FFAC meeting last Wednesday, and many of the topics that we discussed in FFAC will be talked about tonight, so we'll let those come up as they do. One other thing I just wanted to report out on here is that The Illinois State Scholars came out today, the list of those, and Dekalb High School had 41 students chosen for that very distinguished honor. So congratulations to our students who achieved Illinois State Scholars.
When
That's
that
great.
release, when's that scheduled to come out? What the name, is the names will be released?
Yeah, because the names are on this.
May have already, may
Yeah,
have gone
maybe
out just today.
But congratulations to our staff and our students. That's a great honor. Anything else to report out tonight? Okay, next we have the non-business consent agenda. Approval, or I'm sorry, that the Board of Education approve the non-business consent agenda items A through F. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Jeff Albright,
Yes.
Carrie Millette,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
Yes.
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Next is business consent agenda, that the Board of Education approve the business consent agenda items A through E.
So moved.
In a second,
Second.
discussion? Roll call, please.
Carrie Millette,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
Yes.
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Albright.
Yes.
This is business and finance. 2017 tax levy adoption. This is an action item, that the Board of Education adopt the 2017 tax levy as presented on the certificate of tax levy. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Discussion?
Yes. But you presenting first or you discussing? Go.
Yeah, discussion, so you go ahead.
Okay, just real briefly, I just put a couple of slides together, not very long, like the last time with November 21st meeting is when we originally presented the tax levy request. So I just wanted to go through a couple of items in relationship to that. Again, the tax levy process, the properties are assessed in December and January. The levy gets adopted in December, which would be tonight. The tax rates don't get established until March or April, after all the assessments are completed. We have a small window to do a revision process, meaning we can move dollars around within funds. We can't change the amount of the exemption, but we can move dollars around between different funds. And then the taxes get collected between May and November of 18, and we post that as revenue in fiscal year 18-19. And so again, the calendar at November 21st meeting is when the board approved the levy to be published in the paper, which it was published and posted. I think it was December 8th in the newspaper. We hold the public hearing, which we did this evening. And then the levy gets adopted this evening as well. And then I will file it with the clerk by December 26th. That's the last day statutorily that we can file it, the last Tuesday of December. Again, just a reminder in terms of how much revenue of the pie is of the tax levy. It's about 53% of our total operating revenue, so it's more than half of the revenue that we receive on an annual basis. And then quickly, just a quick history of our EADs and CPIs. Again, this was in the last presentation, but I just kind of honed in on the EAD and the history of that, as well as the new property. And you can see that we were fairly low starting in 2011. We saw those increases or decreases hit because of the economy, and now we're in a upward swing. 2015 we're fairly flat, about 1.3% increase, 7.2% increase in 2016, and then for the 2017 estimated, it's a 5.53% increase in the EAD. So we are seeing the property values increase. This is something new that I put together to give perspective of the levy process. Right now, we're in the process of requesting the levy. So you can see over the years what our actual amount of the request was in totality, which includes the bond interest as well. What actually gets extended is a different number. That number is less because we always ask for more to take in consideration any changes in the EAD or new construction to capture all the tax dollars. So as you can see, like for the 2016 tax levy, We requested a total of about 54 million. What was actually extended was about 51.9 million, so about 52 million, so less than what we've asked for, because we can only get up to the capped amount. What we actually received is something different as well, because what we get extended is one thing. What we actually get is based on collections. So you don't get all of it, because people sometimes don't pay their taxes. They maybe pay in the next year. So we only get what is actually collected. So that is something that's even less than what is totally extended. And then also at the bottom is a history of how much we've actually received. So that total, that last total, so in 2016, 51.6 million is actually what we received in dollars, which was about an $833,000 increase in the previous amount collected. And then you can see the history of that since 2011. And we're actually, for our county, we have a pretty good collection rate. We're in excess of 99%, which is pretty good. You've got other counties, I would say Cook County, where it's probably less than that, much less than that. So it means that the taxpayers are paying their taxes. So it's a good rate. And then the history of our tax rate. You can see in 2011, it was 6.21. Then it started to climb when those EAVs were dropping. And now that those EAVs are increasing, that rate is starting to drop. So you can see the rate in 2016 was 7.81, and it's estimated to be 7.72 based on the estimates from the assessor. And here is an example of some tax bills. What I actually did is I just randomly pulled a couple bills off the Dekalb County website to just give some perspective of what those bills would look like. And if you look at the top, there's 3 different bills. I didn't put PIN numbers or anything. It's just basically where they're located in the county. All of them were in DeKalb Township. What their estimated EAV would be for this tax year and their estimated market value. What the rate setting EAV is, because that's less any exemptions they may have, like homeowners exemptions, seniors exemptions. And then calculated what the estimated tax bill would be to District 428. What their actual tax bill is, and what the change in their tax bill would be if the EAVs stay as is. So for that top property, it would be about a $40 increase from the previous year. The one in the middle, about $61, and then the one at the bottom, about $68. So you can see, obviously, with the increase in the EAV, it's a little bit more in terms of that increase in the prior year. Now, when you compare it to 2011, I wanted to look historically at what their 2011 tax bill is for those same properties. You can see that first one, over that 6-year period, the change in their tax from 2011 to 2017, about $326, so that's about $54 a year. And actually, the 2 properties on the bottom actually saw a decrease in their taxes from 2011 to 2017 estimated. So just wanted to give perspective as to what an actual tax bill looked like for District 428. And then this was a slide from the last presentation as well, just giving a comparison of where we were last year and what we're requesting this year. That top is the balloon levy, what we call it, what we're requesting, the 56.1 million in totality. But more likely we'll get what's based on those EAV estimates, which is about the 54.2 million, which includes the non-interest levy. So that is, the top one is what we will be requesting with our tax levy. And then just some considerations when we're looking at our levy. Again, it's a best guess of what that's going to look like based on estimates. We know all the factors except for the kind of the big ones, E plus assessed value, and also the new property, which determines the tax rate. And we will only get extended what we ask for. So we do want to make sure we capture those dollars, so we don't want to under or overestimate and not have that calculation accurate. The state funding formula does not reimburse the district for lost tax revenue if we don't request enough in the levy, because their expectation is that you will maximize your local available funding. Right now, we are getting property tax appeals. Right, there's about 10 million in totality that various properties have filed for. So what happens is during this period of time before that March date is they review those assessments to see if they can be reduced. So we always send those to our attorney to look at and to advocate for the district as well. There's still the potential for property tax freeze legislation. We don't know what that's going to look like, so we just keep that on our back burner to see what happens. So, and that made, when we looked at it before, it sounded like they wanted to make that CPI to be 0. to try and do that. So again, it's something we have to kind of keep in mind when we're looking at a current levy. Also, pension cost shifts is also a possibility. I know this is something that gets a little redundant, repetitive, but it's just something I want to keep on everybody's mind that that's still potentially out there. And then also the new state funding formula is still being calculated by the ISBE. So we really won't know what tier we're in, probably not until like late January or early February. And we haven't received our state grant or mandated categorical payments yet for this current fiscal year, but we did receive 1.9 million of the 2.1 million that was due to us in fiscal year 16-17. So that's actually good news. And as of 12/16, I went on the state's controller's website. I think last year, or when I was doing the budget presentation, they had, I think, bills in excess of $14 billion. Now it's down to 9.7 billion. Primarily, the main reason is because they issued bonds in order to pay some of those bills. But at least it's not 14 billion anymore. But it's still a big number. And of course, we're in the midst of our bond restructuring program, so we're going to talk about that. And that's it. Any questions? Yes.
I was really happy looking over some of the figures that you presented, particularly the where you've taken the sample of 3 different properties within the district, where one went up and 2, their overall tax bill went down. And congratulations on doing a great job. Where that's going on is because things are happening properly.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could share any insight about those particular zones and areas where things went up and things went down, to see if there's something that we could pass along to the world to say, if you really want low taxes, be this, do these.
And it's hard to know, because in the way that the assessor looks at things, each township has a different assessor. So what I did learn is that depending on what township you're in, the assessment, the change in existing property may be different. So and there's also, like, your neighbor could be a senior citizen that has a freeze as well as a homestead exemption and a senior exemption, which is going to be a lot different than maybe the person next door that does not have all those exemptions. So if you're trying, it's really difficult to compare almost a neighborhood, because so many different things can happen. Or there could be the house down the street that did some improvements, and those improvements increase their EAV, but then they get an exemption over 4 years because it gets phased in. So there's a lot of variables. I mean, it's really it's just, you just throw a dart at a board and just kind of see, okay, what this one looks like, but then the one down the street can be completely different. So it's really kind of tough to do. That's why we always have to look at the whole pot, because we can only control, well, we can't really even control what that assessment looks like, but we can only know what our total is. But there's a lot of different details within the totals.
So in a word, no.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be, and what it would be kind of hard to know what we would learn as well. I think what we would learn is that every property is unique and different.
Thank you.
So I have a question. Based on your experience, is this sort of a best practice, or at least a common practice that school districts adopt a tax levy in this format?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's very, very much what all districts do.
Because if you don't ask for the money that you think could be out there, you'll simply never get it.
Right, you'll under levy, and then that will affect your future revenue stream, because your jumping off point is always the previous year's extension. So if that number is lower, your future number will be low as well.
I think the whole thing's rigged. I mean, it says, for instance, that the state expects us to maximize available local funding, right? Howard, there are things that you can know about what sorts of new construction, what sorts of EAV you want in your district, right? Some kinds of properties bring expenses to the school district, and others don't. I mean, there's just, you're absolutely right. There's so many factors. But if you look at the demographer's report, for instance, and you use the statistics from the demographer's report, you can predict where we're headed. And you can also incentivize what sorts of changes you might want to bring in. You can look at the ratios of retired folks who don't generally bring any cost to the district, but still, in most cases, pay some property taxes at least. You can look at the ratio of government property in Dekalb County as a whole, not just 428, has an enormous excess, in my view, of government-related things. For instance, Northern Illinois University, Dish Health Systems, now Northwestern Medicine, obviously any school district. I could go on and on. I did an analysis 10 years ago on Dekalb County and how this county could become more economically developed and less disadvantaged economically by changing around some of the mix. So yeah, you can know. It's not easy to know, but you can know. One of the things you can't know easily is each township assessor's assignment of factors when they determine what a property is valued at. And each assessor, each township assessor does it differently. There is a state manual that tells you how to do it. Some of them follow the manual to the letter, some of them not at all. And then the chief of assessments at the county level has to put in a factor to try and sort of uniform, make that stuff a little bit less up and down. And then the state also has a factor that they put on. And then there's things like Cook County. It's not evaluated at 1/3 of true market cost. So there's all kinds of stuff. Like I've challenged assessments back in DuPage a couple, 3 times. I've looked deeply into this stuff, and there are ways to fix it, but it's not easy.
But there is nothing of an insight the city is going to be able to provide.
Not quickly.
Within the next 6 minutes, it's going to be.
No.
Maybe not in 6 months.
So I guess my main point is, and concern is, and Cindy, thank you so much for all the information you sent us. It got me going again from what I used to do years ago. And I say it's rigged. I'm not hardly saying that in jest, but also, the way the system is built, it's just very difficult. We really need, in my opinion, to send a signal to people outside of our district to come here, please. Come in. We need a broader base in our tax, in our EAV. And we won't be sending that signal if we continually raise taxes. So although over the last, 7 years or whatever you averaged it out, it's $20, $30 typical per household or per residence or whatever, per property. But unfortunately, we're already one of the highest tax in property tax, in the country, not just in Illinois or Northern Illinois, in the entire country. Dekalb County is already at the very top of that list when you consider a number of different factors that people do when they consider their property tax rate. And we'll never get more people in here if we continue to a little bit. It's not much, true, but we're not going down, and we need to go down. But the way the system is built, it wants us to ask for as much as we can get. We're capped at 5%. Excuse me, Jeff?
It penalizes us when we don't.
Yeah, and in fact, Cindy, you also pointed out in your backup material for us that even our bond rating is somewhat contingent on whether or not we'll ask for the entire amount. Because just as if you buy a house with a large mortgage, the bank wants to know, gee, do you make $200,000 a year or $40,000 a year? They want you to be fat, right? So, the whole system is filled with problems, and it's difficult for a school board or other municipal entities and so on, to try and reduce the taxes and try and move forward in economic development way. But we've got to do it, folks, because every time we don't do it, every time we raise the taxes a little bit more, another person leaves. And unfortunately, the ones that leave are the ones that can afford to leave. So it's a dilemma.
I have a couple questions, real quick. Cindy, on that 12.5 that they gave us for the number.
Yeah.
I didn't ask you this question, and it's really important for me, is how's their guesswork been over the last several years? Have they hit it, or have they been like off by 20%, 10%?
On the new construction, they've been pretty spot on. They've been within a few $100,000 or even less than that.
That close?
Yeah, on the new construction, because that's permanent. That's occupancy permits. That's, saying, okay, here's a property that has been constructed on it, whether it be industrial or residential, and they know that, yep, it's done, and we know what it either got built for or sold for. So that's a pretty solid number. The hard one is the actual existing EAV. And the main reason for that is because of the appeals. So they
The adjusted EAV.
The adjusted, right, when that's all said and done. But the new property has been pretty close.
So we really don't know the adjusted part, but we kind of have a fair idea that 12.5, given past record, might be accurate.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that I have, the problem that I have, that I want to make clear to everybody is, as far as new growth or new new property, that 1.88, which I think should actually be 1.7, given the adjustment that we're multiplying one by the other, but that's equivalent. But 1.88, I think I would be good for the 1.88. The problem that I have is out of the 3.65, which really, given that we're only taking 4, I mean, this is going through it quickly, but we're only going to take 4%, right? So we're really not going to go with 3.65. We'd be going more with like 2.12 or something like that, right?
I think you're confusing what we're increasing the overall levy amount.
We're doing it all overall 4, are we not?
Well, what we're doing is we're taking what we think we can get based on the estimates from the assessor. That, if you can go back.
Our cap is 5 though, is it not?
Well, that's the CPI cap. That's the cap on the CPI. So what we're doing is the one you were at. Yeah, there we go. So if you look at the bottom, where it says levy request tax year 2017, so from the assessor, yes, there. So if all those numbers came true, the EAB, the new construction, that would be our levy extension. That 49,057,000, and then with the bond and interest, the total 54,208. What we're doing is we're ballooning that amount by 4%. We're adding 4% to that 49,057 to balloon it, to ask for more, even though we're only going to get the capped amount. So that's where that 4% comes in. It doesn't have anything to do with the EAV. It just has to do with how much more we're asking for based on the estimates.
So we go up a certain amount every year. The part of that is based on the existing properties.
Right.
And my problem is I would rather, as a sign of, for me, as a sign of making progress, I came on the board with the concept of holding firm on taxes altogether, but I feel that the 1.88 is a reasonable figure because of the new growth. But the rest of it, I'm not really good with the current homeowners. I just really don't feel like putting that burden on the current homeowners. But I mean, I was expecting more feedback tonight. Nobody came to say anything. I mean, which is disappointing in the sense that if they all felt horrible about raising taxes, they would have been here. Yeah.
Well, the feedback, Jeff, is they're leaving.
Right.
You know,
So
people,
their feedback is that they're voting with their feet or
Exactly.
making their claims by feet.
And the 1.88% is the portion that is the increase in the EAB that's attributable to the new construction.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm sorry if I
Okay.
didn't make that clear.
Yeah.
But 1.88 is attributable to new construction.
Right, of the 5.53%.
Right.
1.88 is the new property, the rest is existing property, meaning your home, you've been here. Now, on average, it's gonna go up, the equalized assessed value is going up 3.64%, but again, that's different. Every property is different in terms of what their increase.
Right, so it can't be a uniform 3.64,
No, it is not.
3.65.
No.
As you pointed out from those various
Mhm.
properties,
Yes.
it's all over the board, or at least it's somewhat over the board.
Yeah, probably based on township more than anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I like I say, I feel that we need to increase, or that we are justified increasing our new construction. I just don't feel very good about doing that with the existing properties, because I feel any amount is more than I would like to see. Just as just on principle.
Why are some districts holding out? Like, let's just take Sycamore, for instance, right? Increasing it. Why, if the ultimate goal is to attract more people, why don't we, as a district, consider that a possibility to do that with, within the next couple of years? I mean, really, they're all saying different things, but they're saying the same thing, right? At the end, we're working together in this partnership, and I think that was one of the biggest things as we were running. How are we going to help to lessen that tax burden? And tonight, we sit here with a decision that is really, really important for taxpayers. A lot of people are sick and tired of Dekalb, per se, is very high already. So we have to do something. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to vote to do this tonight, but really, I mean, you think about it, the budget is set, and then we have to, and then that's already set. and then we have to sit here tonight and wait till the very last minute and think about these things when we've already overspent per se. So we have to do something, and the option isn't always to increase. Now, I care for one, and I know that we don't want to have to let go of anyone. I don't want that either. But we have to also consider what way can we look at this in a strategical way to try to lessen that tax burden. And we need to start thinking about that, because otherwise we are going to have a bigger problem. And I mean, I think that's what we're all trying to say tonight, in essence, right?
Well, one of the problems, if you go back to the EAV spreadsheet, where at one time our EAV was $795 million, and it dipped into, and well into the 600,000. When you are losing EAV at that rate, then it's extremely difficult to your rate's going to go up. Again, as your EAV goes down, if you're trying to even capture the same amount of money each year, your tax rate is going to go up.
And I understand that there's such a significant difference between other districts. You look, DeKalb is just ridiculously high.
It is high, but it's your EAV. Part of it is the EAV that you have in comparison to what your budget is. So, I mean, we have neighboring districts that have similar EAV with half or even more than less than half of the students that are in this particular district. So their tax rates, their budgets are much smaller than our budget. So, and because their EAV is high, their budget's smaller, their tax rate's much lower.
Yeah, but it's not the tax rate or the EAV that matters, it's the combination of the both. It's the dollars out of your pocket that matter. So in Sycamore, for instance, their tax rate's 634, if I remember right. They just published it last week. Their EAV, I mean, when you look at the types of housing in Sycamore versus the types of housing in DeKalb, their housing stock is much more expensive than in DeKalb or even Malta or Portland. So their rate can be lower because their overall EAV is higher, proportionate to the number of units and the number of children and so on. So when someone comes in and decides, do I want to move here or do I want to move there? They shouldn't just look at the tax rate. That's what people tend to do, but they shouldn't. They should look at the value of the property they're interested in, then multiply it by the tax rate, see what their actual tax bill is going to be.
Right.
That's why 428 has to reduce the overall expense, namely the property tax, that's the single largest expense to a person's household budget, and of taxes, that is. And then we'll start having incentive for people to come here. They'll want to come here. They won't just look at the tax rate and so it's more here, it's less there.
But Carrie, it's also not just about rooftops. I mean, obviously, that's where we generate a lot of our revenue. But if it's having a diversified tax base.
Yeah, and it's not diversified.
No, I mean, if we had,
When you mean diversified, you're talking about a different sort of property, different kinds of property.
Recently, we all heard about the potential of the Toyota factory that was being marketed in northern Illinois between us and some neighboring communities. Had that facility landed in DeKalb at, I don't know, 600 million EAV, of which we maybe would have seen a third of it. I mean, or 600,000, I don't know. But that's a overnight.
Yeah, it's a lot deeper than that. It's a good starting
point. But also,
point.
if you have a greater diversity in your tax base, you have more commercial industrial properties.
Absolutely.
Then it takes the burden off of the taxpayer, off the rooftop.
Yeah, the only way you can have a bedroom community and all your tax base on that is if every person in the community is wealthy. But otherwise, yeah, you've got to have this good diversity. We don't have it anymore. GE moved out, what, a year and a half ago or something, whenever it was. The one thing after another in terms of manufacturing or industrial, bye-bye, it's going away, right? But even in Rochelle, which has done better than DeKalb for some while, Ontario is now in trouble, right? And then I can remember when they came here, we said, fantastic. Now they're in trouble. What about Byron? When the new plant, when the assessment went through the roof and everybody says, oh, good, we got so much money. And then they devalued all the EAV and they're a mess.
And they're paying a tax bill now,
Yeah.
where they weren't before.
Yeah.
You're right.
So it's deeper than just what you said. I mean, that's certainly the beginning of the argument and the discussion, but You know, it's quite complicated, and you can't predict going forward, especially Byram as an example. It's really tough to figure going forward, but diversity in general is good in your economy. That's why when I did my analysis for the county, and I wasn't looking at it just for schoolwork back then, I was looking at it as a homeowner. You know, when I did the whole thing back then, I said, man, this place is way too heavy in government, way too heavy. I mean, look at the $50 million building that Northwestern's putting up now, you know, right next to the YMCA. Is that going to be tax city?
It's a not-for-profit.
That's right, it's not-for-profit. And they're doing that so they can, partly so they can keep their nonprofit status.
They can get rid of their money because they only have a certain, they have a huge income coming in. They gotta
Exactly,
allocate someplace where
exactly. They figured out how to play the system,
They get a place to
and it's
sell.
not a bad thing. You know, it's gonna be.
Can I point out one piece
Yeah,
of
Rick.
good news since 2011 and 2017? The statistics, the data that was just shown was, you know, there has been slight increases over in that time span. So hopefully, as I believe you pointed out, if things start to take off, then we're going to see some increasing EAVs, which ultimately then is going to help with the end tax rate.
But what we need to do is incentivize people to come here first, because they're gonna go, if the economy takes off, they're gonna build some, right?
Hey, Gary, Rick wants to say something.
I hear what you're saying, I think it's valid. Also, the other side of the coin, or another perspective might be, that for some families that would consider to move to Dekalb, the tax rate is a part of the factor, may not be their total deciding factor. In other words, for a family that comes here, they may say, hey, what's the school like? What are the programs offered at the school? And so it's very important to have a appropriately well-funded school to attract families to move here, to add sales to rooftops.
Well, and I think too, we have to think about a few things right now. I mean, like, we're looking at our bonds as our next option or our next topic. And if we don't go out and grab all of it, it could really hurt our bond rating.
It's
When we
not
go
seen
out.
favorably by bond rating studies. When we're looking at that, as a whole.
I mean, we're not sure right now where our general state aid is gonna fall. And there's a lot of unknowns that we have going on right now. And I think to not go out and get all we can in this levy, we'd be making a big mistake. Again, we have a lot of unknowns right now.
Well, how can we send a signal, to incentivize, convince people to come here?
Well, I think we have some options after this. I mean, if we come into the summer and all of a sudden, the EAB was higher than we thought, we got more money, why can't we look at abating it back? Why can't we look at paying down some of the bonds at that point in time? Then we're gonna know the facts. Right now, we don't. We don't know general state aid. We don't know what it could do to our bonds when we go out and put them on the market in January.
Right, and you make a good point. I mean, there is an option to abate the bond and interest payments. I mean, basically what that means is taking out of operating funds and putting that aside to use to abate every year some of the bond and interest levy. Meaning that the county would just take that much less off the bottom, and then the district would have to make that bond payment rather than the clerk giving it to us to make it. So that's an option, but it's something you want to do very carefully, very thoughtfully, and have a plan in place and know that you have funds in your operating reserves in order to do that, and then have that happen over a number of years. So then it's not like, okay, we do this big abatement in 1 year and then next year you don't do it, well, their tax bill's gonna go up. Yeah, no, absolutely, it's something we can look at it, if we see, and if we know what we're gonna get from the state, if we know they're gonna pay us this year as well, I mean, it's one thing getting money from the previous year, now what is it gonna look like for this year? We've been receiving our base funding minimum, which is like the old GSA, and we've been getting that twice a month, but we still haven't seen the quarterly payments yet. So until we know, number one, what that looks like from the state in terms of any additional funding from that formula, and number two, can they fund that, not just for our district, but for all 800 plus districts that they're doing this calculation for. So there are a lot of unknowns in terms of what that revenue source is gonna look like, and once that gets steady, And then you can know that, okay, we do have a reserve here, now can we allocate some of that reserve to pay some of the bonds on the interest levy? And that's a way to abate that levy without affecting the future revenue stream.
So you then have to be willing to set that money aside for
Yes.
the abatement, rather than spend it on expanding a program or adding a new program or whatever cost. You have to make that commitment. You know, when Mike Burbick was board president some years ago, I remember him saying more than once or twice in the budget cycle, we will not go deficit spending. That was the consensus of those boards back in those days. We will not go deficit. And there were cuts made because of that stance. You know, and so there needs to be, I think, a linkage, you know, so that if we go ahead and ask for the maximum possible amount, that we've also committed to setting whatever surplus we can find aside, even if it means making some sort of reduction, something. You know, and my favorite one to throw out, and I've said this before, is, you know, the pre-K is a non-mandated program and all-day kindergarten is not mandated. I know a lot of people are completely against this, right? But I'm just showing that as an example of an expansion of something, right? We almost lost the pre-K grant, but actually it did come through. But in the process of almost losing it, we went to all-day kindergarten. There's just an example. You can all have your own opinions on how we should spend and where it should be important.
But you're saying things right now that we shouldn't even be talking about to that extent.
I'll throw you another example,
Don't
right?
give examples.
Should we have air conditioning in Lincoln? We're gonna vote on that tonight. That's over $1 million. I believe that, we'll see. I believe we should, but.
And it's something we can talk about it if they see, these are all options.
I think that the conversation should go through it.
Absolutely.
Put a plan in place.
Yeah, and I think at this time we're probably ready to vote on this.
Well, let's move on.
What is FFA's recommendation for the levy as proposed?
Well,
I want to jump one more time, just one more thing. Go ahead. Cindy, you were going to say something.
oh, well, I mean, this doesn't get discussed at FFAC. I mean, we don't go through the tax levy process there. So, I mean, it's not anything that got discussed there.
Okay, but maybe it should going forward, because you need to do a risk analysis on all the possible changes, right? Your list there was enormous, right? Of the pensions, how much we're gonna, categoricals. There's so many things,
There's a lot
right?
of things out there.
So if we're going to change something and try and get in a position where we can bring people into the district, broaden the base, and then maybe we can spend more money, if we're gonna get to that place, there needs to be a risk analysis done on what's the first best move with the least risk possible. Do that first. You know, so
I would say reduce class sizes. Because
absolutely.
As a parent moving to town, one of the things that people look at, they look at schools and shopping and available and other types of, park district recreation. And when they're comparing school districts, they're looking at class size. And they're looking at 25, 26, 27 kindergartners in a classroom, and they're shaking their head. Or 34 kids in a social studies class at the high school, and they're shaking their head. And they look at some districts close to us, and they're nowhere close to that. So that's a factor that definitely needs to be looked at.
Yep.
Jeff, do you have one more comment?
No. Too complicated. Take too long.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
Yes.
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht.
No.
Mary Millat,
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes. Next up is bond restructuring update, and this is an action item. That the Board of Education approve FFAC's recommendation to choose bond restructuring option number 2, assuming the tax reform bill is enacted in January 2018. The early maturity is issued to refund the Series 2010 bonds in advance of the call date, would be issued on a taxable base. If the tax reform bill is not enacted, the bonds would be refunded based on the original structure, whereby all bonds would be refunded on a tax-exempt basis, and that is option 1. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And we did present this information to FFAC at the December 13th meeting. So, and there's a presentation here. I'm not going to go through every single slide because it would be a little redundant, but we're just going to focus on 3 of the slides that are within this presentation. We have Adrian Booker here from Elders as well if there's any additional questions. So if you can go to page 14. Oh, I'm sorry, not page 14, page 6. And this is just a synopsis of what's happening with the tax reform bill. And bottom line is that it's really that the last, or the third down those boxes, the tax exempt advance refundings. With the new tax reform bill, that is being repealed, meaning that in the future, or starting maybe January 1, municipalities will not have the option to refund bonds on an advanced basis, meaning before the call date. We did that last year in December. We did, I believe, a little bit of it in this last refunding we did in October and November. And then this next refunding we're doing in January, there's a piece about 2.4 million that's advance refunded of the 2010 bonds. So because of that, if this wasn't happening, we wouldn't even be here tonight, honestly, because we would be going with the old parameters resolution that we did back in September and just move on with the restructuring as we had planned. But because this is pending, and if it does get passed, that piece will become taxable. So there is an implication in terms of what that looks like in our total restructuring process. Because we'll have a piece that is tax exempt, and then there's a piece that's taxable, which makes it a little more expensive. So that's why you're seeing this tonight with an option, why we talked about it at FFOC as well. So then if we go to page 14. And here's, again, talking about those options for the callable bonds. So what we did, if we remember, we broke up the refunding for these 28 bonds in two pieces so we can take advantage of that bank qualified status, meaning that anything less than 10 million that you fund in a calendar year, you can do bank qualified, which means you get a better interest rate. So we did a piece in October, November, and now we're going to do that other half in January. So we still have the bank qualified status. So again, in October, we did the first piece, and that sale went well. Now in early January, we're doing the second piece. These bonds impact the 2017 levy that we're working on now, as well as the 2018 levy. So the three options or scenarios is assuming that the tax reform bill is not enacted, there's really no structural change. But it really does look like that's going to get enacted from what we can tell at this point. So if we assume that that tax bill or reform is enacted, those early maturities that were issued to refund the Series 210 bonds or 2010 bonds in advance would be issued on a taxable basis. And then there's another option if it does get enacted where we would just not even refund that portion, but that would increase the tax bill. So we go to the, let's see, 18, yes. So here's a summary of the different options. So option one is the current option in terms of if it doesn't refund, just go as we had scheduled to do. Option two is to refund the whole amount again with that 2.4 million as being taxable. And you can see there in option two, the yellow part, it keeps the tax bill for a homeowner of about 150,000 value about the same as the previous option. What it does, though, is it increases the cost of that option over the long term because the interest rate's a little higher and the structure is a little different. Option three, you can see if you don't refund those 2010 bonds, you can see in the green part, the homeowner with that same house for 150 value in the 2018 year would go up to $453 rather than stay at the 344 because you're not refunding that portion. You're waiting to refund that until later. So those are the different options. And when we discussed it at FFAC, everybody felt that it was better to keep that level bond and interest payment for the taxpayer, even though it may cost more in the long run. In the short run, we want to keep that payment as low as possible in this restructuring. And the restructuring also changes for the future because now we're going to try and maybe do some advanced refunding with the remaining 2010 and 2009 bonds. But because if this does go through, we won't have that flexibility to do so. Those will just get refunded when they actually become callable, which would be in October of 2019 and in April of 2020.
Questions?
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht,
Yes.
Karen Malat,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Thanks, Cindy.
And next, we have the resolution providing for the issue of not to exceed $8,785,000 general obligation refunding school bonds for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding bonds of the district, providing for the levy of a direct annual tax sufficient to pay the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the execution of a bond purchase agreement with Raymond James and Associates in connection with the proposed sale of said bonds. This is an action item. Do we have a motion?
Second.
And again, this is, the two that are from the parameters resolution and the escrow agreement. These are similar to what we did back in September. We just have to redo these because number one, the amount is changed, and number two, the original, parameters resolution only mentioned tax exempt issue. And now because there's a piece that's not gonna be tax exempt, we have to redo the escrow agreement as well as the parameters resolution.
Provided it passes.
Providing it passes, but we're being prepared because we need to get this thing rolling right when we get back after break. And if we won't have time, to do this in January, so right now we're doing it as an insurance policy, I guess you can say.
Because if it doesn't pass, everything reverts back to option one.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
So if we pass this tonight, it gives you the option, to go ahead and make
Yes.
the change.
Yeah.
But if it
under
doesn't
any
pass, you
scenario.
don't have to make the change.
Exactly, we go back to the original structure.
Okay.
Yes, it just gives us, otherwise, we would be out of the market, we wouldn't get in the market soon. Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht,
Yes.
Karen Malat,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez,
Yes.
Rick Smith.
Yes.
Okay, now we have an action item again, that the Board of Education approve a resolution authorizing and directing the execution of one or more escrow agreements in connection with the issue of not to exceed $8,785,000 general obligation refunding school bonds. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Fred Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht,
Yes.
Karen Malat,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
Rick Smith.
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Next, we have bid results, Lincoln HVAC project, and this is an action item. That the Board of Education approve the Lincoln base bid for the installation of the boiler and chiller in the amount of $1,155,000 to Commercial Mechanical Inc. from Dunlap, Illinois, and alternate bid number one in the amount of $45,000, along with the asbestos bid for the required asbestos abatement of the Lincoln boiler and piping in the amount of $31,695,000 to Environmental Assurance LLC from St. John, Indiana. Do we have a motion?
So
Discussion?
I have a question. Tammy, did we have any local companies responsive to the bid package?
Yes, there's actually a bid tab in the
Okay.
packet. We had, there was a Dekalb, there were two Dekalb and one from Freeport.
Because I know in the past we've had some success, with local companies. I'm a little surprised this time that we didn't have any success apparently.
They were not the most
Yeah,
responsible.
right. Happens that way sometimes.
Tammy, could you briefly describe the process by which you found bidders?
Our architect collects interested parties that are interested in HVAC projects, in addition to projects that have been previously bid on by contractors. And invitations are submitted to those contractors through our architect, as well as we posted in the Daily Chronicle for 3 consecutive days, as required by law.
Typically, contractors have different sites that they go to look for projects that have been posted. And those are posted by our architect to those particular boards, if you will.
So we've covered the field.
Yes.
I was told by a contractor that these people, the businesses, they pay people to check papers every day for projects. So it's out there, everybody has an opportunity to bid if they want. But I would like to say, looking at the number we had before to now, even though it's slightly increased, I think we're pretty lucky to get the price we did, so I'll say nice job with that.
I vaguely remember some discussion in the newspaper about local bidding versus offset or out of the area bidders. And some sort of a factor or mechanism by which the lowest bid didn't necessarily have to be accepted. If you consider, and now I'm speaking not of what the newspaper said, but what I think about this process, that if you had a local contractor doing a job for you, whether or not the cost of the project and the money that they earn, would be reinvested into the local economy. Does anybody else remember, anything about that, from any publication? I vaguely remember something about that. And in principle, the concept is smart. If the difference between bids, between your lowest and next lowest cost is on the order of 5%, let's say, and you can capture, a couple of percent, or depends on the size of the contract, obviously, whether it's worth bothering about. But if you can capture some aspect or some part of the cost of the project and fold it back into the local economy, you may be better off with not necessarily the lowest bid if it's out of the area, but rather the next higher bid from someone that's in the area that will spend that money in the local economy. So I'm not saying that for tonight for this particular case, but I'm saying that's something that I wonder if we could, learn something and perhaps cause a change.
And I love the concept. I mean, we'd love nothing better than to have, our work and projects go to local companies. I just know that, when we put something to bid, we have, a bid process, and right now it goes to the lowest qualified bidder, unless we have good reason that we could disqualify them.
Yeah.
But
I think it was the city of Dekalb, if I remember right. A number of years ago, I remember being at a council meeting or watching it online or something. I think they were talking about things like this.
I've been involved with that.
You're on the Parks Board.
Yeah. We didn't have that on the Parks Board, but they may have put it in because that was under discussion in the Park Board. Is that something that is at the discretion of the board? I mean, in other words, could they establish a policy like that, or are we obliged by the state to take the lowest bid?
that's something I would have to run through our legal,
Yeah.
because
I'm
I'm
just
of the
curious.
opinion that we have to take the lowest qualified.
Oh, sure, yeah, but I just wondered whether that was even something that one could do. I do have a question on it, and the point on this is what we're doing is the boiler is being replaced. We're adding a air conditioning system. This is for the entire school, and it's all established and has been, you looked at it, it's all been established as to it was apples for apples on the bid. Was that correct? I mean, everybody had exactly the same parameters.
All the way down to, we call out specific products that we use, and because we're getting consistency amongst our building as least. This is our fourth HVAC project, or at least in the last 5 years.
And this is something the architect does, right? I mean, their HVAC people look at everything and make sure it's apples to apples.
Great. And at the end of this, we're going to have a great up and running system for the school that both conditions the air to make it cooler and makes it warmer for our students.
Much more efficient.
Yeah, and also I want to point out, and this goes back to Tammy and I being on that, I see committees and subcommittees, that a lot of the stuff in a lot of our schools is very, very old. We've already replaced some boilers in some locations, so it's not just an air conditioning upgrade.
And this
a lot of these.
This
It's
boiler.
original boiler.
I'm sorry, I have one more quick question, which is, when we have an expense like this, when we have $1.1 million coming out of it, do we prepare for that expense, or do we take it out of operating budget? Do we just have to find a place to get $1,100,000 and change, or more, actually?
We do have money that is set aside every year in life safety. Right now, it's $600,000 to $700,000. It's been in past years. And boiler replacement does qualify for life safety expenditures. So that is where the majority of the money is coming from, with the exception we cannot use life safety money for chillers And we also cannot use it for the alternate bid that I proposed in regards to the renovations to those two spaces.
Thank you, I was just curious.
Please?
Quick.
Okay, the doors for 45 grand, what doors do these, what do they
It's
do?
not just doors, it's walls and doors and lighting. There are two spaces at Lincoln Elementary that for several years now have been broken into smaller workspaces for breakouts and for offices, currently separated by partitions that are not very stable and they're only about 4 feet tall, where what we're looking is to break those into spaces that have walls and doors. As we know, those will continue to be smaller spaces versus.
So this increases efficiency in the operation of that building.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
And also, Tammy, 455 left in your budget after you moved
And the
some
life
of this.
safety.
Yeah, is that really gonna be enough? I mean, are you concerned about only having $500,000 left for any potential
Not
things that come up in the
Not
next
at
year?
this time. As I've said in other meetings right now, another major expense that qualifies for life safety is roofs. And as of right now, that roofs are looking really good. I don't plan any replacement projects. We've done a number of HVAC improvements. At this time, I don't have any significant boilers or any kind of HVAC that I'd be concerned would be using life safety. So, and that 455 is for next fiscal year. So again, after next fiscal year, in July of 2019, there'll be another hopefully 600,000 to 700,000 that'll be levied and be added to that account, and we can continue to grow that for those expenses that are qualified for life safety.
Part of the levy, we do levy into life safety. So we do dedicate dollars from the levy into that fund.
All right, roll call, please. Jeff Albrecht?
Yes.
Barry Malak?
Yes.
Victoria Newport? Yes. Valerie Pena Hernandez? Yes. Rick Smith?
Yes.
Howard Solomon?
Yes.
Fred Davis?
Yes.
Next is.
Thanks, Amy.
Oh,
Can I just extend a thank you from behalf of the students at Lincoln, the staff at Lincoln, and the families that attend our school. This has been long coming, and we really appreciate the work that you put forward to allow us to have this. So thank you very much.
Thank you for being patient.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Next, we have the request to bid Founder's parking lot expansion, and this is an action item. That the Board of Education approve administration to go out to bid for the Founder's parking lot expansion. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Just to be sure, this does not actually, if we don't find acceptable bids, we don't do it.
Right.
Okay.
We'll bring the numbers back and the board will look at them.
Roll call. Barry Malak?
Yes.
Victoria Newport? Yes. Valerie Pena Hernandez?
Yes.
Rick Smith?
Yes.
Howard Solomon?
Yes.
Fred Davis?
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht?
Yes.
Next, we have Camelot Schools, and this is an action item. Does the Board of Education approve the plan to lease Cheeseboro Elementary School to Camelot Education and give authorization to administration to negotiate the lease with Camelot, as well as a lease for a rental space for the district storage? Both leases will be brought forward for approval at future dates. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please. Valerie Pena Hernandez? Yes. Rick Smith?
Yes.
Howard Solomon?
Yes.
Fred Davis?
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht?
Yes.
Barry Malak?
Yes.
Victoria Newport? Yes. Next, we have the 3M tax abatement resolution. This is an action item that the Board of Education adopt the 3M tax abatement resolution as presented. We have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please. Rick Smith?
Yes.
Howard Solomon?
Yes.
Fred Davis?
Yes.
Jeff Albrecht?
Yes.
Barry Malak?
Yes.
Victoria Newport? Yes. Valerie Pena Hernandez?
Abstain.
Next is new business and administration, and this is a discussion item, 2018-2019 school calendar.
So, administration has been meeting with DCTA and discussed the calendars for the coming year. We've attached 2 proposals or 2 options contingent upon the completion of the air conditioning at Lincoln. So we have an interview, so we can take questions. You had a chance to review those. The first option would allow us to start earlier in the year, ending finals and break prior to the winter holiday break.
Now that we just passed the motion to have install AC at Lincoln, then we would be proposing option A, which would have the institute days August 13th and 14th, with the first day of school being the 15th. Again, that calendar would allow for final exams to be before winter break, ending the first semester before winter break. And the last day of school,
The 22nd.
thank
May
you,
22nd.
thank you, would be May 22nd with emergency days going through the 30th. So we worked with Principal Horn at the high school, DCTA, and this really is more in line with some of our area schools that we share a vocational center with. And that's and also the main portion of this is getting final exams before winter break, so the kids aren't spending time working on projects and I assume some kids study, you know.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks, they're all, I mean, they cram, so.
Wouldn't think of doing that at Elgin Community College. You wouldn't think of having it be moved over. It just would never fly. So.
Well, and this also mirrors what our students are going to experience beyond high school.
Sure, absolutely.
So, we will be recommending now option A. Carry over to our next board meeting, I suppose, in January.
Do we have a consensus?
Because this is all contingent on the completion of the air conditioning in Lincoln. Everything we're doing here, I'd just like to hear the other one. I favor this.
Plan B was a similar calendar to this year, that we would start a week later, which would be the 20th and 21st would be institute days, the 22nd, first day of school. Final exams would then be pushed beyond winter break, with school not getting out until the very end of May. So if for some reason we found that we were running behind schedule with the Lincoln HVAC, then we would have to make an adjustment probably in April or May to the school calendar.
So if we chose option one, we would be able to make an adjustment and it probably extended it to the end.
Yeah, we could. I mean, it would be somewhat disruptive to parents, families who are already planning on starting, but actually it would give them another week. But we could if we had to.
Do we have a consensus then to bring option A back?
Yep. Can I ask a question briefly of Tammy? Tammy, any reason to think that, I mean, if given approval that we could get it done on a fairly tight schedule or a fairly?
The project, the HVAC project was bid under the premise that we needed to have this done by the end of July, the HVAC project, which then allows us the time to clean the building and move back in before teachers would need to start occupying their space to prepare for the school year. So the contractor is aware of the potential change in the school schedule, and we backed it up a week compared to how we've handled most. And they're committed to that, and there's actually costs involved with them if they don't meet those deadlines.
So there's a penalty on the
There's a
contractor if
penalty.
they don't comply
That's
with that schedule.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And the nice part is, because it's an inside project, it's not weather dependent like
Right.
other construction projects often are.
Right? Yeah, and it's during the summer.
We've done projects like this before, right, Tammy?
We've done these projects many times,
Yeah.
not on this short of a time frame. We cut it back by 1 week. In saying that, we've done a lot more complicated projects in a short time frame. For example, renovating the entire inside of Tyler. And it was done in time and ready for movement, so I would not anticipate any issues.
Yeah, so performance history for the district so far has been pretty good, right? And
Absolutely, and the fact that we've approved it early, the contract to be awarded to the contractor early, and they can get their parts and equipment ordered early, which typically that's what can cause lags in the schedules when the equipment is not ordered in enough time to be on site for installation.
Thanks very much.
Next is the DCTA letter of agreement.
We get consensus?
yeah, you asked after that.
Next is the DCTA letter of agreement, assignment vacancies, and this is an informational item.
Our department has been working with DCTA leadership around the efficiency of filling positions. Conversations have taken place over the last several months, looking at the language and how we can become more efficient in the interview and hiring process to, get teachers in the classroom more quickly. So we've been meeting and discussing the language and came to an agreement that we would like the board to consider that would reduce the internal posting timelines from up to 10 teacher work days to 7 calendar days consistently throughout the calendar year. The contract currently states different time periods depending on if school's in session or teachers are working or not. Some being 5, some being up to that 10 work day. By reducing it to 7 calendar days, it still provides internal opportunities for DCTA members to have that first chance at open positions, but it allows the district to externally advertise if necessary more quickly. For example, under current contract language, being teacher work days in 10 days, this entire time period where we're out on lunch break wouldn't be counted towards those 10 days. So it can be internally posted for several weeks at a time. And oftentimes there are qualified internal candidates that are selected for me, but sometimes there's not. We have to go external, and the current language delays that. So we've met and agreed on language that we have for you tonight. So let's bring staff for approval in January. Yes.
With 7 calendar days, I'm a little concerned about times when we actually are going beyond that in terms of work days. And we've made a decision that we're going to actually bring somebody aboard. If we, like we're doing it, we're going to start a vacation. We're going to start a vacation. Count 7 work days from now, we're still in this year. But teachers will never have had an opportunity to see it. I want to try to make sure that we avoid situations like that. And build this in.
And we talked with leadership about that communication piece and to be shared with DCTA. It's reducing the days by 3. I guess we would have the same obstacles over the summer and break periods currently. And we send notices out, electronically. All internal postings are emailed to all district staff upon every posting. And we've actually already posted our projections for next year that we are aware of, with retirements. So we're trying to be more proactive. Thank you to filling our vacancies, especially that we know are coming.
And the DCTA's agreed to this? Okay.
For example, and just touch on that a bit, the period over the summer when teachers are on break is actually lesser. So, I feel confident with the 7 calendar days because we always provide days during the week as well as weekend.
So do we have a consensus on to bring this back at the next meeting?
Yeah.
Yep. Yes. Thank you.
Next, we have request for proposal, DHS marching band uniforms, and this is an action item. That the Board of Education approve the request for proposal to allow the bidding process for new marching band uniforms. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Discussion?
Good idea.
All right. Roll call, please.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Fred Davis.
Yes.
Jeff Halpern.
Yes.
Gary Malott.
Yes.
Victoria Newport.
Yes.
Valerie Pena Hernandez.
Yes.
Rick Smith.
Yes.
Next is an action item, middle school summer school restructuring. This is an action item that the Board of Education approve the restructuring of summer opportunities for middle school students that the FTEs neutral are appropriated for the 4 FTE for the middle school summer school to DHS summer school. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Confirming it's FTE neutral.
Yes.
Correct.
Just moving the FTE, like you said,
Correct.
your middle school program.
Right.
Which I just want to add, it was a really good idea of you guys to think of that. I mean, it really is promoting, like you guys gave plenty of examples and, Tim, that's a bright idea to partner up with other people to have, something else going on for the middle
I
school.
would add, we had a really nice, productive conversation with the Dekalb library this morning, actually, went very well, so, for their existing summer, reading academy, so, it was promising.
Perfect, thank you.
I got a question quickly. I remember, Tim, from your presentation, it was a good presentation, I just can't remember, is this for this coming year for all time, or is this
summer, yep.
one time, one year, and then we readdress it? Or is it going forward to stay, just for it,
I would
stay with the high school?
I would assume, it would probably stay.
I mean, I suppose any board.
I guess, Terry, all I would say is,
bring the issue again and revisit everything, but your intention at this point is, as you.
The intention is that this proposal will be successful, and therefore we wouldn't recommend changing it, without being able to tell that for certain, absolute certainty. Until then, I would be hesitant to guarantee that at this time.
We're gonna just see how this works, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
basically, the presumption is that this would be a better way of arranging it. And when you made that presentation, I think that was very.
Right, it's a better allocation of our resources to, model at the high school with an existing waiting list and with the 90+% of the students gaining credit, that it would likely continue with that for FTE.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Howard Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Albright,
Yes.
Mary Malott,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Hernandez,
Yeah.
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon.
Yes.
Next, we have
Thanks for thinking of that, Tim.
additional building substitute for Founders Elementary. This is an action item. That the Board of Education approve the additional 1.0 FTE of a building substitute for Founders Elementary for the remainder of the 2017-2018 school year. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Jeff Albright,
Yes.
Mary Malott,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Hernandez.
Yes.
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Howard Davis.
Yes.
Next is the contracted long-term substitute for speech and language pathologies. Christine, this is an action item. That the Board of Education approve the contract with Community Therapy Services for a substitute speech and language pathologist to cover a maternity leave during the month of January. Do we have a motion?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mary Malott,
Yes.
Victoria Newport,
Yes.
Valerie Hernandez. Yes. Rick Smith,
Yes.
Howard Solomon,
Yes.
Howard Davis,
Yes.
Jeff Albright.
Yes.
Okay, with that, the meeting will be adjourned. All in favor?
Aye.
Don't forget, 1 o'clock, or 1:30, we have conversation at the high school tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's an open session.
Yeah.